It was important for all of us to fight back and say, we are still here. We are not defeated. And you cannot stop us by killing thousands of innocent people. You cannot stop us by knocking down skyscrapers. Nothing will stop this city.
From the 9/11 Memorial Museum, this is Our City, Our Story, a series where New Yorkers talk about their city, what it means to be a New Yorker, and how September 11th changed that. I'm Jenny Pachuki.
Across the 5 boroughs, New Yorkers know George Whipple as the man with the eyebrows who reports society news from the red carpet for New York One, the city's local television station. He's a multi-layered character. On his website, he describes himself as a lawyer, a journalist, a philanthropist, and a farmer. When I asked him to tell me a bit about his background, he revealed a rich and interesting family history that dates back to more than 380 years ago.
Born and raised, New York City. Our family came to America in 1630. We stayed in Rhode Island for 200 years. And then we were brought in chains in the Revolution by the British and imprisoned in the prison ship Jersey in Wallabout Bay in Brooklyn. And my great-great-grandfather's legs rotted off from gangrene in that prison. And so we stayed in New York. So we've been in New York for 200 years. But I also have a property upstate in Putnam County. So we split our time really between New York City and our farm in Putnam County.
The image of George Whipple tending to a Putnam County farm wearing denim overalls is very different from the George Whipple I think of, who attends star-studded events, reporting from the red carpet wearing neatly tailored suits. He tends to more than just fields in Putnam County, though. He also focuses on historic preservation in this small county of about 100,000 people, located some 53 miles north of Manhattan. And maybe it's his deep knowledge of his own family's history that fuels his general interest in preserving the past. You're a man who seems to have a sense of history, who seems to be interested in your personal history and preserving history in the landscape. Can you talk a little bit about that? Where does that come from?
You know, I don't know. I think part of it is genetic and part of it is the way we were brought up as Whipples. I think that the way I was brought up was that as you pass through this life, everyone that is associated with you, everything, institution that is associated with you should be better off for having associated with you.
So you feel that preserving history in structures and land is part of that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, in 1999, I started a foundation in Putnam County called the Society for the Preservation of Putnam County Antiquities and Greenways. And I decided to try and do a few projects in my hometown where philanthropy wasn't really a very well established, it was an unplowed field. I took an abandoned gas station that was in the middle of the town, and we converted that to a conference center, which the town didn't have, a park where the pumps used to be that people hang out in every day. And in the corner, we raised a memorial to the people that worked at Cantor Fitzgerald and were first responders that lost their life in the 9/11 attack. And we have a piece of steel in the form of a cross that is part of that memorial.
Why did you think that it was appropriate to marry a far history with a more recent history and make that space a memorial space?
I think it became history when we dedicated that memorial. And we festooned the town with flags, and the policemen and firemen came up in full dress uniforms and played the bagpipes, and some words were spoken and some benedictions were made. But what was absolutely incredible is that it was a absolute torrential, freezing cold rain. And these guys stood at attention in that freezing cold rain for hours. And John Spain, who dedicated that park, and Pat Flynn, who was a Marine, fought for his country. We just sat there and cried and cried and cried because it was the most amazing tribute in a blinding rain, sleet storm to have these guys standing there in full dress uniform in tribute to these guys. It was a very, very, very moving thing.
On September 11th, George watched the towers burn and then eventually collapse from his office that was then located on Madison Avenue and 23rd Street. As New Yorkers sought to recover, George would receive a call asking him to come downtown and support a friend who wanted to help his city.
I think the most moving thing to me was that Jane Rosenthal called me up, who's Robert De Niro's producing partner. And right after the towers came down, she said, I want you to come down. Bob needs your help. And Bob De Niro has this restaurant in Lower Manhattan. And I went down there, and De Niro said to me, it wasn't on camera, it wasn't anything. It was just a couple of us people. And he said, George, they attacked my country. They attacked my neighborhood. And I'm going to do something about it. Okay? And living down there, he saw that the immediate local impact was that nobody was coming downtown. So the restaurants and the newsstands, they weren't getting any business. The terrorists had frightened people away from Lower Manhattan. So his attitude was, the hell with this. And he rented buses on the Upper East Side and drove people to Lower Manhattan and opened up those doors and said, go into any restaurant, order dinner. They need your business. De Niro is a very, I think, complicated, noble, and public-spirited. But this was such a simple act.
And he's very humble about it. He didn't even want to really detail it when I asked him about it when I interviewed him.
No, there was no press. I don't know why they wanted me there. I think they thought I would help them, and I did. But he also strikes me as shy. Someone who's maybe a little awkward with people, although when you get him talking, you realize he isn't, but he appears to be slightly uncomfortable. And he went from restaurant to restaurant, table to table, and shook everybody's hand and said, thank you for coming downtown.
I interviewed De Niro for an episode of this podcast called The Actor, and when I asked, he didn't share these details that Whipple remembered, and I had wondered why. But speaking with Whipple, I realized that maybe De Niro was like a lot of the others that I've spoken to. People who did incredible things on and after 9/11 and didn't want to talk about it. It wasn't about taking credit. The act was enough. I wanted to know more about how the local entertainment industry responded to 9/11, and Whipple brought up De Niro again. He talked about covering the Tribeca Film Festival, which De Niro co-founded to restore vitality to Lower Manhattan after the attacks.
Yeah, they got that going, I think, within months, again, as a way to drive people, just to bring people downtown. I'm not even sure they thought it was going to be an annual event. I don't know. We were there from day one, New York One. We covered every single event that they had. They said they thought we'd driven 250,000 people to their family festival downtown because we relentlessly promoted it. Because,
why was that important for you to do?
Well, because I think it was important for us to support the effort of fighting back. And as New Yorkers, and as a television station that covers only New York, it was important for our station, within the bounds of journalistic ethics, but it was important for our station to fight back. It was important for all of us to fight back and say, we are still here. We are not defeated. And you cannot stop us by killing thousands of innocent people You cannot stop us by knocking down skyscrapers. Nothing will stop this city. And if you think you can, you're wrong. Guess again. And I think it was important that New York won. I think it was important that other media, I think it was important that celebrities made this statement. It was one of many, 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 many statements that were made. But this was what these people could do for their neighborhood, to have the horrible damage, the horrible loss of life stop, and not let further damage take place, not let further collateral damage take place, like local businesses going out of business, like people moving out of the neighborhood. And they were going to fight back. They held the line, and all of New York held the line.
Our conversation evolved into a lighthearted one. After sitting across from him for almost an hour, watching his signature thick, dark eyebrows, I couldn't help myself. My last question, which I have to ask, one of the reasons we're interviewing New Yorkers, and you are a recognizable New Yorker because of your eyebrows. What's the story behind your eyebrows, George Whipple?
Well, it's a good question. We had a reunion of the Whipple family. We have a house that's still standing in Ipswich, Massachusetts, that we lived in the early 1600s. And we had a reunion there. And I'm 10 generations away from that, and I live 200 miles from that house. But I have cousins that live within a mile of that house 400 years later, 10 generations from the founder of the family in America. And a lot of them have thick eyebrows. But my great-great-grandfather married Alice Bridge Webster, who was the daughter of Daniel Webster, who was United States Senator and Secretary of State. And he was known for his ferocious voice, high forehead, and big eyebrows. Now, much to the disappointment of some New Yorkers, I have both cut an inch off my eyebrows, and there's a little color in them because I look like Santa Claus with those big white eyebrows. But they've been licked by Jewel.
Oh.
They've been played with by David Bowie. And they have been revered by Heidi Klum, who, by the way, is much annoyed, along with the police and the local precinct, that they've gotten shorter.
Well, I guess you've just got it going on then. It's your signature. Power brows.
Power brows.
From the 9/11 Memorial Museum, this is Our City, Our Story. I'm Jenny Pachuki, series host, writer, and producer, with executive producers Michael Frazier and Carl Cricco, and additional production support from Elizabeth Bistro. Special thanks to CDM Studios. For more on the Our City, Our Story podcast series, please visit 911memorial.org.